February 5th, 2024 Community and Public Services Committee meeting to order. And I would like to start in a good way. I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and Métis homelands, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, as well as Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. Next, we will do a roll call. Mayor Sohi. Councillor Rice. Councillor Knack.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Paquette.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mayor Sohi. Councillor Rice. All right, Councillor Wright.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Tang.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Rutherford.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Salvador. Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Jans. All right, Councillor Rice.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mayor Sohi. All right, he should be joining us shortly. I see he tried to join online. I'm sure he'll be with us shortly. Next, we will move with the adoption of the agenda. Could I have one of my colleagues move the adoption of the agenda? Councillor Knack.
Certainly happy to move the adoption of the agenda and just as presented.
Thank you. Any questions? Please vote.
Yes.
I'm yes.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that has carried. And we'll just mark Mayor Sohi as present, as we heard from him. Next, approval of the minutes. Please, Councillor Knack, would you mind moving approval of the minutes?
Would be happy to move the approval of the minutes from the January 15th, 2024 Community and Public Services Committee meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Any questions, errors, omissions? Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that has carried. Next, protocol items. We do have a protocol item today, and I'm really happy to and honored to be able to share this with you. I'd like to start today's meeting by recognizing that February is Black History Month. This month is an opportunity to celebrate the many contributions and achievements of Black community members. Over the next few weeks, we'll honor the past and present residents of African descent who've shaped our city and world for the better. It's also time to acknowledge that despite progress, many racialized Edmontonians still face racism and systemic barriers to success. Fighting racism has been a top priority for this council. I am proud that the City of Edmonton has worked hard to learn from the community and empower progress. Thanks to the input of more than 1,000 community members and city employees, many anti-racism projects are now underway. Although we still have many goals to pursue, I'm confident we're building a strong foundation for a brighter future together. I encourage everyone to participate in the vibrant cultural events, educational opportunities, and celebrations this month, because we all have a part to play in creating a city where everyone is understood, celebrated, and supported. Thank you very much for giving me that opportunity to share that with you. And next, we will go to select items for debate.
Chair Principe,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I do have a councillor recognition, so I think we'll probably do it here or after we select the items.
Oh, no, please do. Please do. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before we dive into our business today, I want to take a couple of minutes to recognize the incredible city employees who support our council meetings. Since its opening in 1992, City Hall has been a safe space for our city to come together, engage with local representatives, and shape the future of Edmonton. But on January 23rd, a violent crime shook that sense of security. The stress and trauma that staff experienced that day cannot be understated. Despite these unprecedented challenges, staff quickly adapted to get council meetings back up and running remotely after City Hall was closed. And they continue to work to keep our government running, uphold our democratic processes, and perform the duties that residents rely on. City Council is deeply grateful for their professionalism, dedication, and hard work during this difficult time. The City of Edmonton is providing multiple employee support programs and one-on-one counseling for those affected. I encourage everyone to access the many resources available. And please know that we remain committed to serving Edmonton while ensuring the people who make their work possible are healthy and able to heal. We could not do our work without them. So I would like to invite my fellow councillors to join me in applauding the staff who made today's meeting possible. Thank you, all of you, immensely.
Hear, hear. Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Mayor. That's so true. And thank you to our city manager, Andre Corbold, for leading us through this. We've been very well supported. Thank you all. Okay, now we'll go on to select items for debate. I'll ask my colleagues to please sign up to select items for debate.
Mr.
Mayor?
Yeah, I will select the turf maintenance report.
6.1?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, so next we'll go vote on reports not selected for debate. So I'll ask my colleagues then to vote on the reports not selected for debate.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that has carried. Request to speak. We do
Councillor Principe, may I just read in the
yes, please
thank
do
you.
read in what's already been approved. Thank you by committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Principe. So this morning, committee has passed the recommendations of the following reports without debate. Item 5.1, social services agencies for houseless persons, and item 5.2, mortality rates and Edmonton's homeless population.
Thank you so much for keeping us on track. Wonderful. Next, we will go to requests to speak. We do have a request. We have one speaker that signed up. And I will just ask one of my colleagues to read in the speaker, Councillor Neff or Mayor Sohi.
I'll move that we hear from Eric Lewis from QP30 remotely.
Thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that has carried. Request for time specific on agenda, none. Councillor inquiries, none that I'm aware of. Reports to be dealt with at a different meeting. Request to reschedule reports done. Unfinished business. We are on to item 6.1. So at this time, I do believe we already had a presentation from administration, but I do believe that they have some new information to share with the committee. So I will ask administration to please share the new information.
The new information that we were going to pass on is we did share a memo with council related to additional historical figures. This was a question that was left unanswered last time when we discussed this report. So we did share a memo with council to extend that timeline to show here's additional historical values in terms of our service levels along with our budget. In addition to that, we did highlight that if there were to be any sort of budget adjustments or increases, how we would allocate that. And so what we highlighted was any sort of changes to a budget, what we would do is prioritize trimming, the weed whacking to first prioritize that. That's one of the more visible items to Edmontonians, along with weed control, horticulture, that type of work within our program. I believe that's all I wanted to pass on in terms of some of the additional information that we left committee last time unanswered.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Next, we will hear from our speaker. And I would just like to go over the process for administration will provide opening remarks as they just did. Members of the public who have registered to speak will then be invited to make their presentations. Speakers will be heard in panels and each speaker will have 5 minutes to present. The clerk will run the official timer. The timer light will be green for the first 4 minutes, turn yellow when there's 1 minute remaining, and flash red when the 5 minutes are up. As a virtual participant, you may wish to use a timer of your own. Please remember to mute your microphone when you are not speaking and refrain from using the raise hand function as it creates issues of fairness and decorum. If you are experiencing any difficulties, please reach out to the Office of the City Clerk using the contact information provided in your confirmation of registration or at city.clerk@edmonton.ca. So next we will hear from our speaker, Mr. Eric Lewis. Eric, please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, city councilors and mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. As you all know, Edmonton has a long winter and our summers are shorter than most would like. We all long to see the tulips pop up in April and the grass turning green in May. With Edmonton having such a short summer, residents try to take advantage of our long summer days as much as possible. We enjoy walking our beautiful river valley, barbecues with our family and friends in our many parks, and taking our children to the city playgrounds. We are an event city in the summer because so many Edmontons participate in outdoor events because they know winter is just around the corner. We enjoy our 17 hours of sunlight and stay outdoors until the sun sets, soaking up as much of it as we can. Residents want to enjoy their summers outdoors in their beautiful city, and that's why it is so important to properly maintain the grass, weeds, and flower beds. The city needs to return to our green spaces to a level Edmontonians expect and what they were once used to. During the COVID pandemic, City Council decided to save some money by cutting back on service levels for turf maintenance. This was necessary and understandable due to unique financial pressures that period produced. However, since then, turf funding and maintenance has not been brought back to previous levels, and we are seeing the effects across the city. Turf that is left to grow longer is more difficult to maintain. Flower beds that aren't properly weeded will become unsightly in a matter of days. In consultation with members in the turf area, QP30 is recommending that council moves to return to previous service levels. Specific turf should turn to a 5 to 7 day mowing cycle, 4 to 5 trim cycles per season. With the flower beds, more manual weeding. We pulled away from the spraying of weeds. And right now, my understanding is that we are weed whacking the weeds. What I'm hearing from the members is we cut the weeds with a weed whacker. It takes the top of the weed off, so it's you don't see the weed, but within a short amount of time, that weed just grows back. We need to properly maintain this stuff and not just let it go to waste. This is a service enhancement to, this is not a service enhancement, but rather just a return to service levels that Edmonton expects and deserve. To do this, the city would have to hire more staff, but the benefits to our green space and the people who use them will be huge. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your presentation. Next, we will go to questions of the speaker. Do any of my colleagues have any questions to the speaker? Please sign up. Mr. Mayor, please go ahead.
Eric, thank you so much for joining us. I just had a opportunity to ride along with one of your members who collect waste in multi-unit dwellings. I can tell you the dedication that they show to the city is absolutely phenomenal. So just want you to know that on this. So we haven't seen investments since 2019, but the inventory of the turf and horticulture has grown since then. But I also understand that in some other cities, they manage horticulture differently. So I just want to get a sense from you from both questions, like the gap that is growing if we don't close that gap, and what other different practices that other cities that you may know of that are implementing.
Thanks for those kind words about meeting up with my members. I'm not aware of what other cities are doing. I could look into it. QP30 has municipal workers across Canada, and we do have researchers, so I could look into other practices that we do. I just talked to my members who have 30, 35 years of experience, and they talk about how it was done before and how the work is being done now, and that cutting back on the services, the grass is growing taller, and once you get out to that and you have to cut it, you have to go over it more often. So what if you maintain it properly, as you all know, cutting your own grass at home probably is that if you let it go for too long, it takes that much longer to cut it. But if you keep up to it weekly, you could do one pass and it's done rather quickly. So all I have is just on what my members told me and their experience over the years. And they're saying that it's not even that much more staff that would be needed for this. It's not like we would need to double the staff to cut down, but we do need to get back to what we were prior to COVID. And we do have more parks and more stuff being added. So we need to be on top of that. We need to see how these green spaces are growing, how we're adding more green spaces, and properly staffed to maintain those green spaces.
You know where we were before 2019, how many cycles of mowing we were undertaking and where we are today?
I was told 5 to 7 days, I believe it was. And now we're at 10 to 14.
And we know, like I noticed that our city not being as clean as it needs to be during our short summers, and that is the direct result of that, inventory growing, but also so we haven't even maintained the funding to maintain existing standards, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, we haven't maintained. So what I've been told is that it was cut back during COVID, and understandable with all the financial situations that were going on. And we've still, from what I've heard from my members, is that we're still at that level of what we were during COVID. Now we're coming out of COVID. I hope that financial situation isn't the same as we were when we were in COVID. But now that we're coming out of COVID and things are starting to move again, and people are getting more active and getting out there, and more events are happening with larger population of people attending these events, that the parks need to be taken care of. More people are getting outdoors. More people are coming out of their houses and going into larger crowds. And we are an event city. We know it. We hear it. Our summer times are full of events. You go from one part of the city to another part of the city, and there's a different event happening. And with that type of exposure, we want to make sure Edmonton is a beautiful city.
And you would classify this as a core municipal service, right?
I would classify this as a core municipal service. Cutting the grass takes care of rodents, keeps mice out. The coyotes and whatnot can't hide in the longer grass. I hear from my members that there's parks where there's long grass and the coyotes are hiding in the grass close to playgrounds.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Councillor Rice. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Principe, and thank you, Eric, for coming to speak on this important work our city's core services. So, as you mentioned, and you heard from some of your members, and also I got an opportunity to speak to some your members regarding this work, and through different events I attended, and they brought a very, very good point. The inventory is increased and since 2019, but the current service level and then is not at the level as our Edmontonians expected. So my office actually received lots of emails regarding weed control, regarding the turf management, and regarding like horticulture programs. And then what I heard, we really expect these services could be improved to really care about our green spaces and meet the needs and for our city's beautification and for the Edmontonians. So my two questions related to you. One is about when we talk about the staffing. So what is the shortage and the gap for that staffing right now?
I'm not specific on the actual levels, and I'm sure administration has good information on the levels that they would need to increase the service. I just, like I said, I talked to my members, and they were talking about the different amount of crews that they have, and that they would probably have one more crew per area that they worked on. That would make a huge difference. And a crew is usually 3 to 4 people per truck. Then I believe the other issue too is retaining some of the staff. We did lose some of the staff during 2020 with COVID and whatnot, and the downsizing of the area. And by having more full-time permanent jobs, that retains staff. They know they have a career. They know that they have a future and they want to stay with the city. So I think having that ability to have those permanent staffs would retain more people and would help the program, because you're having the same people, year round in that area that know the job, and it increases efficiencies. They know the equipment, they know the parks, they know the trouble sites, they know where to start cutting, they know specific times on when to cut, not to be in a certain area when, say, like recess is on or something like that, and there could be kids walking in around the area, so they know to take their breaks at that time. So just having that experienced staff and retaining that experienced staff is huge.
Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That is really important. Yes. So another question is about I received from Edmontonians about this approach and how we cut grass and how we do the weed control. The way the method we use right now, I don't know if is that under your team members or is under administration, because there are different perspectives and for our city how to do that weed control.
Yeah, so with the weed control, I know it was the direction to get away from the herbicides and the spraying of weeds. which we all know we probably all have to deal with weeds in our own properties. Spraying a weed and walking along and it dying a couple of days later and not coming back is a lot easier and efficient. It might not be as environmentally friendly, and by pulling away from that increases the amount of maintenance that needs to take care of these weeds. You need to pull the weed at the root. If you're just going over with a trimmer and you cut the top off so that the weed can't be seen, within a week it's back again. So we need to get to the root of the cause, and that's to actually pull the weeds out. So by getting away from the herbicides and the spraying of weeds, it has increased the amount of work that needs to be done to control the weeds.
So that is actually related to the staffing. So we need the staff, and we need the work on the really gets that work done, and instead of just the cream on the surface piece.
Yeah, because if like you have a bed full of weeds, and if you were spraying them, you could just go around, one staff sprays them all really quick. Well, now there's a lot more time to maintain that by pulling those weeds. And yeah, you need to increase your staff because it's just that much more work.
Thank you so much, and I think you provide very good information, and even to help myself and help public understand that work's importance. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Wright, please go ahead.
Thank you. And thanks, Eric, for that pun about getting to the root of the problem. So I'm just, but so it might take more man hours or person hours, sorry, to initially pull those weeds. But once they're pulled, there's less need to go back and do it again because they're gone. Is that right?
Yeah, we all know weeds. You can look at your lawn one day and there could be no weeds, and then the next morning you wake up and you see all these beautiful yellow weeds that are popped up on there. But yeah, if you think about when you pull a weed and you get to the root of it, then it doesn't grow back. And you might have one that grows a little bit later in an area next to it, but just like I do a lot of flowering weeding in my own flower beds. I do a good maintaining of it, especially in say June and early July. And I have the odd weed to maintain throughout the summer if I do a proper weeding of that. And that's the same with the flower beds and areas within Edmonton. If we get to them specifically early and take care of them, it prevents the weeds from spreading. It gets them all out, and it's not like we're just taking the tops off and leaving the roots in the ground for them to grow back that much quicker.
So we're maybe putting in a little extra effort at the start, but then as time goes on in the summer, we don't need to do as much. And I'm just wondering, with the permanent staff now that have gone from temporary to permanent, would those like doing the snow maintenance right now, would those people then be able to transition over into the turf maintenance?
Yeah, so that's what they utilize right now, is a lot of the turf people who do the grass cutting in the summertime. Come October, they transition over to the snow removal part of the city's maintenance. They do have to show expression of interest and go through a whole process to switch over, which is time consuming and takes up a lot of time to transition and move these people around. So yeah, they do have that, and by keeping them permanent, that also does have an effect on both areas. So you keep skilled workers on the turf, and then you keep skilled workers on the snow removal.
Okay, perfect. And I thank you for bringing up the safety concerns with the long grass, that it's not just for cosmetic reasons that we want to have, manicured lawns and everything. And I'm thinking about the sports fields too. I've heard from many different groups over this past summer, actually, that were concerned about the soccer fields and that not being properly maintained. Anything else you want to say on that?
I haven't really heard much from my members about the soccer fields being properly maintained. So I'm not sure what concerns, if they weren't being cut short enough, or maybe there was longer grass in and around the soccer field. So when the ball went out of play, it might have went into the longer grass and they were searching for it longer. So I'm not 100% sure of the concern of that, but
It was actually the fields themselves not being cut, and, you know, the younger kids, especially with grass up to their knees. So.
Yeah. Well, you know, with anything, the more staff we have, the more we can maintain those levels. We also need the equipment. I'm not sure what administration has for equipment. I do hear from my staff that there is the equipment, and we've had lots of equipment because before COVID, we had the staffing levels and we had that equipment to do the work. So some of that equipment could be sitting longer than needs to be. And my experience, when equipment sits longer and then you do fire it up, you know, lubrication and fluids aren't moving as much, so that equipment can break easier if it sits for a longer time. So it is good to run that different type of equipment. So if we have the equipment, we should get the staff to run it and maintain these parks to a level that Edmonton wants.
So not much of a capital outlay then for this coming season, more so just the operational for staffing. Is that right?
That's what I'm hearing. I don't know 100%. I think that's a question that council will have to ask administration.
Okay, great. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Rutherford, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Principe. So I've been thinking about this issue a lot since being elected, and I think there's kind of a few things to grapple with. First of all, the problem that's in front of us right now is we have a higher inventory and less resources going to that higher inventory, let alone meeting it. But then I also think about some of the systemic stuff. So I guess two questions I have for you, Eric, and you kind of talked about it with your answers to Councillor Rice's things, but while maybe not the most popular, what do we need to revisit that policy on the herbicides from QP's perspective?
I think it's worth looking at. Maybe there's technologies that have advancements in herbicides that are more environmentally friendly. I know that they're when it comes to fertilizer and whatnot, they've made changes in fertilizers. When it comes to the herbicides, like I said, there might be something that might not be as impactful, or maybe the way and conditions in which we spray it is more controlled. I know in the past, when I actually started in the spray area within parks and back in 2002, a long time ago, and we were doing, you know, around light poles and around fences and garden beds. And maybe you look at spraying specific weeds only, maybe ones that are more problematic, that spread quicker and faster and are harder to control. Maybe we spray those weeds, and then other weeds we maintain manually, aren't as problematic. So I think it's something that doesn't hurt to look at and see what there is, and maybe a policy does need to change in the way that it was applicated, but like I said, it doesn't hurt to revisit it.
Okay, and then another question is around, you know, the number I find most shocking. I actually don't find the turf number in the report that shocking in terms of 5%. When you think about our consistent growth and our outward growth as a city, and I know we're doing systemic things to change that, but that's where we are right now today. But I was really surprised by the shrub bed inventory increasing by 18.8%. And I wanted to get your thoughts on, like, have the members talked to you at all about, like, where they're seeing that growth happen, where that pressure is coming from, where are we adding more inventory, and what are their thoughts on where it's necessary and where it's not necessary?
I did hear from some of my members about the new LRT line that's through Mill Woods and the amount of shrub beds that are around there, and how much time and effort is going to be needed for those shrub beds, and the design of the shrub beds, how they are made and put together when it comes to snow removal and all that kind of stuff. So they were going to have a more difficult time with the snow removal because of the design of the shrub beds, and just the amount of shrub beds that are happening out there. Yeah, they said that we do have a large amount of shrub beds that are hard to maintain, and they take up a lot of effort to maintain them. So yeah, there is some concern from my members, the amount of shrub beds that are out there.
Okay, and then my last question is, we get these reports, they talk about the need for more resources. But I know one thing that we're trying to do within OP12 is a reallocation of resources. And I know through conversations with you, we've talked about, frontline versus other layers of management that are, necessary. But have you seen a shift in that? And if so, is it good? Or you think it's have we struck a good balance, or what more should we be thinking about in terms of the distribution of the current resources?
I haven't really seen a shift. I've seen a small shift, but nothing that's huge. And I would have to, like, there's a couple different things that can be done that I hear from my members when it comes to some of the management. We have, the city split is one of the things. We have one management that runs the north and one management runs the south. And my members did say that it could be a more consistent if it was one manager that ran the whole city. Obviously, that's another thing that administration has to explain to city council. I don't know the ins and outs, and my members don't know the ins and outs of the work that needs to be done and how it's managed. But they did say that that's how it was done in the past, a long time ago. But the city has gotten bigger with more green spaces, so maybe there's a need for that. I'm not 100% sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Sorry, I went over time, Chair Principe.
No problem, not too bad. So it looks like we don't have any other questions to the speaker. Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lewis, for joining us today. You can just still stick around if you like. We're going to ask questions of administration now. We do have a somewhat unique circumstance right now. We did have a motion on the floor when this meeting was postponed. So Clerk Karbashewski, is it possible for us to display the motion that was put on the floor?
Councillor Principe, absolutely. We will display that one so that committee can ask questions of administration.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Next, I will ask my colleagues to please sign up to ask questions of administration. Mayor Sohi, you selected this item. Would you like to start? Okay. Any other colleagues to ask questions of administration?
I'm sorry, I was on mute, Councillor Principe.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to start with administration, following up on Councillor Rutherford's question around the growth in the horticulture assets inventory by 18.8%. And I understand that is other cities haven't grown that much in that area, right? Particularly Calgary. So what are we going to do to manage that? And can you speak to that?
Mayor, so I can get started. Craig McEwen with Parks and Road Services, and then I'll hand it to our IAS colleagues. But this is definitely something that we're keeping an eye on. The first thing is, I know we as a city are looking at our design standards and having that reviewed. In addition, taking a pause on all capital projects that are currently in the design and construction stage right now to see, can we rationalize these types of assets? Before I get too much into detail, I'll either ask Natalie or Nicole to elaborate on that.
Happy to jump in here for a minute. As Craig had mentioned, we are in the process of updating our design standards, not only the complete streets design and construction standards, but our landscape standards are being updated at the same time. And as Craig had mentioned, I want to clarify what we're doing in terms of capital projects. So for all capital projects that have not yet been built, so any of our designs that are underway or prepping for tender, our teams are looking at any features that may be high maintenance or high cost to maintain and operate over the life of those assets, and are looking at alternate features that will be respectful of our operating budgets. So that work is well underway with all of our capital infrastructure projects.
So that is within our capital projects, which I appreciate, because we're going to continue to experience financial challenges, and we need to manage the costs by, not having too much of the inventory created. And also, how do we work with developers? What I have seen is that certain areas, developers, for their own, selling features for the neighborhood, do build to a higher standard, and that when we take over that inventory, is more expensive to maintain that, right? So what are we doing to kind of create more kind of uniform standards that are, if somebody wants to go above that, maybe they should be paying for the operations for foreseeable future?
Good morning, Mark here from Urban Planning and Economy. Yeah, that's correct. What we were doing with the Volume 5 standards updates for landscaping is we're going to be looking at that. So developers kind of have an understanding of where that minimum standard is going to be. And currently right now, if we do have developers providing a higher level base improvement of standards, we do have them enter into maintenance agreements that sometimes they pass off to homeowners associations. So we do have sort of a process in place that does apply to that, I would say, very high level of standard. That's sort of a extraordinary kind of thing in that Volume 5 landscaping standards.
Okay, I'm glad that we do that, but I hear complaints about higher standards not being maintained for long term, right? So maybe it's more enforcement issue. I don't know, right? So so if we approve additional funding, the approach that I put together in the motion was the restore funding to 2019 levels first, right? And if that is approved, if committee approves it, then council approves it at the spring. When how would that impact the coming season?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So generally speaking, we will probably need about 6 to 8 weeks to staff up and train. So post, recruit, hire, train, gather the equipment. There's probably a 6 to 8 week window. That gets a little bit shorter depending on the volume. But in a spring, so about the end of April, I think it's fair to say by mid to late June, we'd be starting to achieve those adjusted service levels.
Also, you can hire staff or reallocate a staff within the existing staff complement, or
we would take if there were any sort of additional funding, we would take that and then incorporate that into our seasonal hiring plan. So just adding to those numbers and then sourcing equipment, whether we're looking at leasing or buying, depending on timeline and the particular piece of equipment. And so usually about 6, probably closer to 8 weeks if it requires more leasing of equipment and training staff, and then starting to achieve those adjusted service levels would likely be like towards the end of June. So then the July, August, and into September timeframe, we would be achieving those service levels.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Councillor Rice. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and Chair Principe. Mayor asked some very, very good questions, and then I got some answer and from those questions, and that's a similar question I was about to ask. And I have 2 questions follow up to clarify. So the first one is about the funding source. So if we're going to, because right now the situation, the problem we want resolved here is inventories increase, but the service level and the funding is not match that inventory increase. If we want to address this issue, the funding and service package, the funding is from capital profile? Is specific from capital or is from operational? Because we are talking about staffing, hire more. We have sufficient staffing and we have some equipment. And to me, sounds like operational, but this is also under the capital. So it's a little bit, can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, so the report was written in a way that it would clarify the amount of operating dollars to achieve those service levels. But depending on what that operating amount would be, there would be a capital portion. So this might be an appropriate time to mention that I believe we were working in the background on adjusting some of the wording in the motion on the floor with the mayor's staff. And it does clarify that there would be a slice of capital required to support the intent behind the motion.
Yeah, yes. That is what's my next related question. And then this motion specifically from mayor's office, I really appreciate mayor's office bring this motion, and then their staff working on behind. And then this is also expanded the orange in the motion, and then from 2022 when Councillor Principe put on for the turf management, also expanded my orange motion amendment for the budget 2024, and in last November. I think this work actually is really great to reflect and how we can address that situation in the big picture. So that means the funding will be covered the two level, right? The operational portion and then capital portion both.
Yeah, the updated wording addressed that, just to clean up some of the language, clarify exactly the intent behind the motion, and speak to the capital portion. The nuance our finance team was updating me this morning was the timing. There's April SOBA and then June CBA. So
yes, because for the spring SOBA, we do want to get this move forward, and then we have time and to really reflect work and to address the problem and in the coming summer for 2024. So that is one portion for that piece. And then the ongoing portion will be the SOBA full budget adjustment. So that is timeline. But my question is, where is the funding from? And where is the funding right now and is available and to cover these core services?
So Councillor Rice, maybe I'll just jump in here and say that any service package would obviously needs a funding source. Right now, your only funding source for ongoing service packages is tax levy. So an increase or a service package would likely be funded with tax levy. Although I acknowledge that there might be some reallocation as a result of Op 12 when we get to the spring SOBA.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you for that. And then that means we do have the hope, we have the funding, and from OP12 will not impact our tax levy. I think that's what my understanding from the information city administration provided. So my next question, quick question, and 30 seconds, and is about follow up on the how we get to the roots for the grass cut and really make sure that efficiency there. And then instead of we are just doing the surface and then 1 week and come back again, we have to do that again. Is there any way how to do that? For grass weed control.
I'm sorry, do you mind, Councillor Rice, do you mind repeating that question? I might have missed that.
Oh, okay, my time is out. I will leave that. My colleagues may continue to ask that question. Thank you. Return to you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Paquette, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for all the work on this. And just to clarify, the motion on the floor, Madam Chair, is this the motion that is intended to be voted on? Is there going to be a withdrawal of this motion, a new motion put on the floor, an amendment made to this motion?
We'll see. Either an amendment or a withdrawal will happen with this motion. The reason that it was delayed was that we needed some more work on the motion, but the motion was already on the floor. So just procedurally, we put it back on the floor.
So before I start asking my questions, is it possible to have that clarified so that my questions are in alignment with the motion that will actually be on the floor to be voted upon? Can we
Okay.
just procedurally clean that up a little bit, please?
Sure. The mayor and Councillor Rice both spoken and no one had made any
Just saying,
changes
like,
to the
public
motion.
conversation, the public won't be able to see what the actual motion is, and the motion that is going to be on the floor is related to the questions that I would like to ask.
Okay, so how about if what we do is I'll go to either Mayor Sohi or Councillor Rice. I see Councillor Rice is on the board. I'll go to her and we'll come back to you once we get the correct motion on the floor then, okay?
All right, and this was more of like a point of order, like the order of how we're actually going to debate on what we're going to vote on. And
Right.
so I would prefer that this was not counted as my time since I'm actually raising a point.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So would you rather come back then?
Well, as chair, would
When
you
the
mind
motion-
taking care of this now? And then I'll come back and ask my questions.
Absolutely, certainly. I will ask the mayor then, please, would you like to make an amendment to the motion that's on the floor?
So I think, Chair Principe, I think the cleanest would be that if Councillor Rice can withdraw, then I can put forward a new motion because there's some capital funding attached to it as well, which is not included in this this motion. So the revised numbers as well, right? So if Councillor Rice is amicable to that, that'll be the cleanest way. Otherwise, I would have to amend this.
And Councillor Rice, would you like to withdraw the motion?
So this motion original wording and from mayor's office at that moment, and because mayor was unable at the meeting, because the intention of the motion and really in align with my original intention, or even like Chair Principe and you tried to do in 2022 to address the service level shortage and with the increase inventory for the turf maintenance and weeds control, horticulture programs. I think it's very, very good. And then mayor's office work on this and with more information right now provided with city administration. I can withdraw with this motion and for mayor to restate the updated wording and including the funding amount number there, everything there. I think by that way our city can move forward and to really to increase our green spaces management and for our Edmontonians. And thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Rice. Mayor Sohi, would you like to restate your motion? I just wanted to check with the rest of committee just to ensure that it's okay. Can I just get yes? And Councillor Paquette, I understand you're okay with a restatement of the motion?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks. Mr. Mayor, please go ahead.
Yeah,
You can
so
restate the motion.
I will move that administration prepare an unfunded service package for consideration by council for the spring 2024 supplemental operating budget adjustment to increase the 2024 turf and horticulture operating budget by 1.31 million and 0.97 million respectively on an ongoing basis to the 2019 funding levels and prepare a capital profile for the June 2024 supplemental capital budget adjustment for up to $400,000 in capital costs as described in the January 15, 2024 city operations report CO02130. And the second part, that administration prepare an unfunded service package and capital profile for consideration during the fall 2024 supplement operating and capital budget adjustment to increase turf and horticulture funding to be able to deliver the enhanced service levels as outlined in January 15, 2024 city operations report.
Thank you. Would you like to introduce
Yeah, quickly. First of all, working with administration, uh, we were strongly advised that we don't give direction for funded service package at this time because we have to have that discussion during the spring. So I would have preferred to stay with funded option, but I respect the administration's advice because then we can debate and compare to other priorities as well, right? And also there's changes on the capital cost that would be required along with the operational cost. So that's, and also dividing into two parts. One is immediate, if spring, and during spring, if we are able to do so, if this passes, then we will be back to the 2019 funding level. And then we'll have further discussion in the fall around enhanced services standards. So I'm dividing into two parts to mitigate some of the cost implication, but also having a more staged approach that administration can implement quickly in order to maybe have better service improvements this year if we give approval to part one in the spring, and we would have to debate that during that time in relations to where the resource is going to come from.
Okay, thank you for that. Next, we will go to Councillor Paquette.
Oh,
Councillor
thank
Paquette,
you.
please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Principe. So my first question will go to Ms. Padbury, and I'll ask the question. There may not be an answer. I understand that, but mid-pandemic, right when it began, it was I think the second year of the last 4-year budget, and council at the time was receiving a lot of requests from the public to reduce the property tax rate in order to help them through COVID. This led to a number of cuts to the city, a massive decrease in budget and services, and that continued from 2020, I believe, to 2021, 2022, and we won't worry about that. The point is that there was a massive reduction in budget and therefore a massive reduction in service levels. And I am just curious if we know, because, okay, let me back it up. Sorry, I should have really thought about how I was going to ask this. We have our current tax rate at 6.6. Before it was 4.95, and we've got the next few years now to work on. The delta between what it would have been to maintain everything versus what it is now is very I'm very curious about that. So there was a reduction in the taxes, and now we've got what appears to people to be a massive increase in taxes. But if we had maintained the 4-year budget tax levels that were determined in the last 4-year budget to have the same budget that we have now, what would the tax rate be today? That was a long way to ask that question, but I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Okay, so let me maybe break it down this way. Back in 2020, we reduced the turf maintenance program, or we proposed to reduce it on an ongoing basis by about $1.3 million. I think what ultimately passed was about an $800,000 reduction to turf maintenance. And so at that time, that would have been probably about a 0.1% tax decrease. And so now this motion on the that you're debating here today is adding back 1.3 million and 0.97 million. So you're about a 0.13%. So the delta is probably about $500,000 that you're net adding if you would have kept what you would have had before and then just increased for the inflationary impacts and the growth at the same time.
Right. Okay. So that makes a lot more sense. And is there a simple way to communicate that with the public? Probably not.
We could definitely craft some easier messaging. I just need a little bit of time to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Because while it's true we had some reductions and we're in a period of growth or rebuilding. What I find really interesting is that compared to other municipalities, because Edmonton had that massive decrease, our increases are actually comparatively less than any other city's other increase. Like our 6.6 is far less, according to that delta, than say Calgary's tax rate. And if there's a way to communicate that to the public to show them that even with the increase, the fact that we're able to contemplate this is actually costing less than it would have cost, if you'd lived in another municipality. So I'll just leave it at that. Now, a quick question to administration. It's just the permaculture conversation. A lot of people think that our approach is just letting things go to seed, but really it's about long-term savings in expended resources. So there's been a lot of dissatisfaction of how that's rolled out, and not a lot of great communication with the public. And it's still not impacting our boulevards, which I think is a major cost for us. So I'm just wondering if you can speak to that really quickly.
Yeah, just real briefly, the communications approach to our naturalization plan, we've relooked at that over the last couple of years. Have a couple different stages of public engagement, phase 1, phase 2. So we're going to be re-looking at how do we better educate and share all of the great work when it comes to the naturalization file and what its intended purposes, how long it takes to establish. We've updated our website, and we do field questions like this from time to time. And there's definitely a time and place for naturalization. And so we're working on how do we better communicate and articulate what that looks like and the benefits of it. So that's a very valid point.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. Actually, Craig, while you're still responding, I'm just wondering, in the motion, it talks about the 400,000 in capital cost as described in the report. I've just searched all the documents and I don't see any reference to capital.
No, the report doesn't reference the capital. So I'm not sure if we need an additional adjustment to that language, but what the report talked about was this was the operating to keep that going, and we would need to calculate it. So the dollar figures here, the 1.31 and the 0.97, we have a rough order of magnitude of what the capital that would be needed in order to support that on an ongoing basis. So the intent here is to have a order of magnitude of capital that would be supporting that operating increase.
So is that for the equipment that would be needed, or?
That's right. Yeah. Equipment, mowers, trimmers, those types of things that would be needed to support the staff. That would really be the lift in terms of increasing those service levels.
Okay. So, but I mean, Eric from QP30 was saying that there seems to be a lot of that equipment available. Have we done sort of a check on what is available and maybe just needs to be?
Yeah, I think what you might be referring to there, and so in general, I would say equipment utilization wasn't the issue when it came to achieving our service levels. There are instances where, we might have an old mower that likely should have been rationalized, but we kept it in order to try to have, additional spares, those types of things. So there might be some pockets of instances of that taking place, but in general, these service levels weren't being achieved because of the historical growth in inventory and the reduction in budget that's outlined in the report. So the utilization is not the issue, is not the main issue here.
Yeah, and I mean, and that is a relatively small amount. So, okay, I was just wondering about that. And then I guess to Nicole, you talked about the design standards for all the capital projects. I'm just wondering currently if we have an organization that maybe wants to help to maintain some of the sports fields themselves, is that being considered to help reduce the city's overall costs?
Sorry, I think that might have been directed at me, and I'm not sure I can speak to the sports fields maintenance side of things.
Okay, Sorry, Natalie, I thought it was Nicole that had mentioned that. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I'm not sure, any of my other colleagues online able to speak to that piece?
Councillor Wright, we do have home base agreements to deal mostly with baseball diamonds, but they aren't typically for turf. But our partners in CRF would know basically what if that is the case. But that's, you know, we do have them on Iverdant and some agreements on larger sites, but not on the smaller turf sites that we're talking about here that PARS maintains currently.
Okay, because I mean, I do have an organization out in the ward that's interested in the fields just north of the Meadows Recreation Center. And yeah, they have funds available and they have people available to maintain the sports fields in a better way. And I'm just wondering if that's something that can be looked at to sort of reduce the city's overall costs.
Yeah, I think generally the partnerships groups in CRF do look at that regularly and do entertain that. And so I think they're best placed, Councillor Wright, to let us know if that makes sense. We do have a school site coming on. There are some other challenges with that particular site, but yes.
Yeah, my understanding it's not, that portion isn't school, they're designated for schools. So it's the Punjab Warriors and they have tried, and who is CRF?
That would be Roger's team.
Okay, and what does CRF stand for? Sorry? Community Recreation Facilities?
That's
Okay.
That's
Okay,
right.
it clicked in my head. Thank you.
Yes,
All right. And then I guess my last question over to Mark. What if there is no homeowners association to take over some of those higher level standards?
So when a developer has like those very extraordinary higher level standards and they have a maintenance agreement, we do have a maintenance agreement with that developer to maintain that in perpetuity. If they walk away with that, we have letters of credit that cover the value of removing that higher level and bringing it back to base level. So not maintaining it, just removing it and putting it back to base level.
Okay, and would that be then, and I'm thinking, I talked about the signs, so the landscaping around the neighborhood entrance signs, are they responsible for maintaining that into perpetuity?
If there is a maintenance agreement in place and we have a copy of that, they would be maintaining that in perpetuity, correct?
Okay, if we have a maintenance. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Stevenson?
Yes, thank you very much. And thanks for the excellent work on this report. I just wanted to start with a quick technical clarification. Maybe Ms. Padbury, this one would be for you. Would we need to specify, sorry, I'm just reading the motion, not sure I understand. Would it be the 2024 and 2025 turf and horticulture operating budget by those two values respectively?
Yeah, so the way I read this, you are adjusting the turf budget by 1.31 million and the horticulture budget by 0.97.
Oh, those are separate budgets. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Great. Well, I just wanted to go through, and I apologize if some of these are duplications, but I heard some of these themes and just wanted to clarify that I'm understanding the next steps as well. So really appreciate what we're doing sort of on the operational side. On the inventory side, are we looking at sort of a comprehensive review of our park standards, of our IIS standards in terms of how we're continuing to grow and then potentially reduce the growth of our inventory?
Hi, Councillor Stevenson. It's Nicole Wolf here with BGN. So as part of our Volume 5 update, we are looking to make things consistent across the city. So for both developers and for the city as to what type of landscape is appropriate in what areas. We also need to make sure of ecological impacts, biodiversity. There's a balance of operating impacts of capital as well as the aesthetic greener as we grow city perspective. And we're looking at putting levels and identifying right place for the right time for the right landscape that's going to look at all of that, as well as more sustainable options of what we're going to plant where to, is what we're doing with our standards.
That's exciting. And so that would consider, you know, my assumption would be sort of leaning more towards more naturalized spaces, lower maintenance spaces. Yeah, that's the intent. Great. What's the current timeline on that?
So it's aligned with our complete street design standards because they play with each other. So it will probably be Q1 2025 by when it's going to come in. We do still have to do consultation with our partners, UDI, and those folks that are on the development side of the house to make sure we're aligned and we're listening to the feedback associated to their requests and requirements as well.
Great, great. That's very exciting. Then, yeah, again, maybe just on that question of naturalization. So I heard definitely some work happening around increasing education, awareness of that program. And I apologize. I feel like I should remember this. I know we've had reports, but just in terms of our overall naturalization strategies, again, are we seeing a shift in policy? Are we, what's the status there in terms of how we're moving forward with that?
Yeah, we're definitely still moving that forward under council's direction, and really what we're trying to do is highlight the education aspect and the communication. How do we inform, educate, show the benefits of it? Updated our website, adjusted the approach to like the 3 stages of naturalization, to try to clarify, what to expect in the each stages of when an area will be naturalized. Along with the ecological benefits of naturalization. We've done 2 rounds of public engagement. So it is still a file moving forward, and it does go hand in hand with the turf and horticulture. But we're definitely still moving that forward.
Great. And so I think that education, that awareness raising is really excellent, just in terms of sort of the speed and extent to which we're naturalizing different areas. Like, where are we at that? Are we moving forward with that more quickly, in terms of what's actually going to be naturalized?
I might have to call a friend on this one. We're advancing a lot of the naturalization alongside our 2 billion tree grants with the federal government, planting 2 million trees. We are moving forward with analyzing all the different areas across the city in terms of where can we plant trees, and concurrent to that, where can we also naturalize.
Okay, so there is sort of that active analysis that's underway.
It is, yeah. The mapping portion is completed now, but I don't know if I have a great answer in terms of like the pace at which that would move forward. But there is work moving forward under that umbrella from the 2 billion tree grant.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for that. And thanks for the great work.
Thank you. Councillor Rutherford, please go ahead.
Yeah, I guess a few things. And I'm going to go to Ms. Lazurko first. So we've talked about, and I've definitely brought up the IIS and needing to right size stuff, especially on the operating impacts of capital. Have there been conversations about, because I'm hearing it, City Op saying they're doing these maps and analysis, which is great, but how are we actively advancing naturalization in our IIS planning going forward?
It's a great question, and some of my colleagues here on the call can also speak to this perhaps. But as part of our work, when we are advancing capital infrastructure projects and there's a landscaping component to them, we make sure that we are looking at the possibility and the development of naturalization plans for them. And I'll give an example with the Terwilliger Drive expansion program. A large part of that landscaping design includes naturalization. It's an interesting corridor with some challenging terrain, including some low spots and so on. And so that program or that landscaping design around that capital infrastructure project is really centered around ensuring that we have a easily maintained landscape, including naturalization. Nicole or Suzanne, anything else that you'd like to add?
Thanks, Natalie. Councillor Rutherford, I would add that we are looking at even in our park spaces. So, recently we finished Seacourt and we had retained the tree stand. And as part of that, we're also naturalizing within the park site. Also, as part of low impact development, there's naturalization happening through that. So I would say it is part of the standards, volume 5. There are some minimum and species requirements, and we will be reviewing that as part of the volume 5 review. But I would say we are trending in that direction, even in our district and community parks. So you'll see more of it on the boulevards, as Natalie, and our main freeways, but also across a number of our asset types.
Okay. So, and I guess then to go to Mr. McEwen or Mr. Robar, I heard in your response to Councillor Stevenson's, you're doing a lot of analysis. I didn't hear any active transitioning to naturalization happening right now. And I want to know, has there been a cost benefit analysis? Is that work happening with IIS around maybe it costs slightly more on the capital side, but it saves us this in operating if we are naturalizing these areas, we're doing permaculture, we're using native plant species. Like, I feel like there's a lot of analysis and conversation that's happening, but I'm not getting clear line of sight of the actual work that is coming out of this.
For sure. I'll start by saying, and Nicole Fraser will be able to add a few more details, but we are still moving forward. It's usually like a 3 to 4 year process to naturalize an area. Throughout COVID, naturalization ramped up quite quickly, so fast that some neighborhoods, not everyone was appreciative of it. Some people really do like that area. So there was not necessarily like a pause, but trying to.
Well, no, we did have a reversal, and we had that conversation at committee. And my understanding was it was still moving forward. I just want to make sure, and I'm just mindful of my time, that there's some action happening in this, both on the how we're building, how we're developing, and how we're regenerating areas. So that's where I just want to go with that. But I wanted to I want to be respectful of time. So I also want to talk about the herbicides. And like, I know this decision was made in 2015 and you talk about it in your report. And I can imagine many of the conversations that happened around it. Many of the concerns are still very valid concerns today in terms of biodiversity and those kind of things. But at the same time, we do have a problem now where I'm seeing, noxious weeds overtaking things. And I can't imagine that's also good for biodiversity. So is there technologies that have changed since 2015? And does this need to be revisited? As at least in terms of a conversation?
I would answer that by saying it's a tool in the tool belt. We do still use herbicides in certain areas for regulated noxious weeds, but the broad, I guess, ability to leverage herbicides has been dramatically reduced. And so the intention of mentioning it in the presentation in the report is to say, without that tool available within the tool belt, it impacts the amount of labor that's required to keep that same standard. And so without a commensurate increase in operating budget to hire more people to pull the weeds, but the tool belt has been reduced by no longer having that ability to leverage herbicides, the service level is impacted. We have actively not moved forward with proposing it being re-looked at. That could be in OP12 initiative, but since it was clear council direction, it's not something that administration plans to, or at least that our team would be, proposing to reverse.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmell.
Thank you. I just wanted to circle back on the Terwillegar Drive comments. I was going to leave this alone because it's a little bit detailed, but I'm not quite sure who to ask about this, but I was asking about the landscape plan on Terwillegar Drive since the start of the project. And there's at the north end of where that ties into Terwillegar to White Mud Drive, there's a common grass median, which in general terms is unmaintained. You can't see the barriers along both sides of that median because the weeds are roughly 4 feet high. They're filled with trash. It's profoundly unsightly. And my question early on was, why would we emulate that approach to put grass in the median between the two directions of the ramps where it comes onto White Mud? Why wouldn't we do something else? And late last fall, we planted grass, which we already know cannot be maintained. So I guess I'd like to know, first of all, what the decision process was on that?
I'll maybe lean on Suzanne as well to help with this, but in the case of that specific location, I can't tell you exactly why grass was selected. But in the case of Terwilliger Drive more broadly, the plan for the corridor in terms of the landscaping was really centered around trying to ensure that it was as maintainable as possible, as well as looking into the naturalization of the corridor. And so we've been working with our landscape designers as well as our infrastructure maintenance folks to ensure that we've got something that can be geared towards balancing the cost effectiveness as well as aesthetics of the corridor. And all of the landscaping along that area has been selected based on ensuring that those species are appropriate to Edmonton and appropriate to the context.
So my observations and that of several people I represent, and I've asked this question repeatedly as well, the landscaping in the median of Terwilliger Drive is quite elaborate. There's a lot of planting there. There are irrigation systems in the median, and I'm not sure how they're serviced. And I've asked about what the operating plan and what the operating cost impacts will be of nurturing all of that material along that roadway. And I guess I'm wondering, is there actually an operating plan and an operating cost estimate for all of that, what appears to be extremely elaborate landscaping work?
I wouldn't necessarily call that elaborate. Again, these are native species that are being planted in and along the corridor. There's nothing elaborate or exotic about it. We are trying to select species that are able to tolerate the harsh conditions of this type of corridor, whether it be the low areas of the corridor or the areas that are more prone to dryness and sun and wind exposure, as well as salt damage. So again, all of the designs that we're doing for these capital infrastructure projects, including Terwilliger Drive, are done in collaboration with our operations and maintenance folks to ensure that we are designing them in a way that can be operated and maintained.
Okay, so I might have to consider a motion at some point here to find out what the actual operating plan is, because I don't want to get into a debate here, but there's a lot of material there that is going to get overtaken by grass we can't cut, which will become weeds we can't attend to. And as I said, I've been asking these questions for years, and I just can't seem to get a straightforward answer. So perhaps on a later day, there'll be an option for a motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmell. Councillor Rice?
Thank you. I want to go back to the motion to get a clarification for the funding. So the 1.3 million is for turf management in 2024, 0.97, and for the horticulture program. So then the part 2, we said we will get this unfunded service package and for the ongoing purpose. Is the same amount and for the part 2, or the different amount, or is this amount reflect and before 2019?
I believe how I'm interpreting this, the amount in the first portion is to connect is to get the budget to the 2019 levels. That would not mean the 2019 service levels, because the inventory has grown in those last 5 years. But this would be, the way I'm interpreting this is the unfunded service package in part 1 is to meet the 2019 funding levels.
The funding level, but not a service level.
Correct. Yeah, because the amount of grass to cut has changed, so the amount of funding in 2019 would no longer be able to achieve the same level of service.
Sorry, I have to mindful my time. And for this amount, specific amount of the funding, 1.3 plus 0.97 is 2.2, about $2.28 million will be ongoing and starting 2024 to 2026 for this budget cycle. Is that part 2?
No, so Councillor, maybe let me try. So The first part of the motion would restore the budget on an ongoing basis to 2019 levels. The second part of the motion would bring a service package to enhance the service levels from something other than the 2019 restored funding.
Okay, so there might be option and come back for the for the full budget adjustment and add additional funding request. Okay, so I thank you for that curve. That means it's not only 2.28 million and may have more, and that it depends on what option come back with unfunded service package. That's additional to get the service level. So the first one is to get the funding level. The second one to get the service level.
That's correct. It's almost like a staged approach.
Okay. My next question is about lateralization area. As Councillor Tim Cott mentioned, and then he received some emails from his area. And for my area, I received lots of question regarding how we distinguish between naturalization area and the widths with like 5-6 feet tall, and in certain area and under and the park standards. And because that is not clear to the public, which area the width should be cut and which area the width just keep as a lateralization area. Is that communication or is the sign there, or is there any other way and the public can understand which area city is doing work and to cut the width to do the turf?
Oh, hello. Sorry, I'm in your way today.
Councillor Rutherford, you're on a hot mic.
Okay.
I can answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
So what we do have right now available online is maps for that you can zoom right in on and see where areas are naturalized and which areas are maintained turf. And so what I hear is I think we can do a better job of communicating that out so our public can go to it. And one of the initiatives that we're working on is how do we show that piece of grass, that piece of turf? Because a lot of the questions we get are, when was the last time this is cut, or when will it be cut next? And so while we have a map that's publicly available that shows the areas that are maintained and all of the areas, like the specific pieces that are naturalized, we're looking at enhancing that to show more of that turf like maintenance schedule to say, this was the last time it was cut, here's when it's scheduled to be cut next, and then this area, and then using that and then empowering our 311 team to be able to look at that and answer those questions directly. I think that would be very helpful for our public.
Even I know 311 is there, but we receive the most emails and questions directly and regarding and specifically in the summertime. I'm really looking forward to some improvement and for that piece, and then really reduce the confusion for the public to identify which area is a lateralization area, which area is width control. We need cut. We need to do that services regularly and to make sure the width is not like 5-6 feet tall, and some places even much taller. So I know my time is out, and sorry about that.
Thank you. Councillor Paquette?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess what I'm hearing a lot here is sort of this tension between the public experience of their city, the resources available to do this, council questioning administration about how things are being done, and administration not saying to council, well, you cut all our budgets. So I think that's sort of the tension there, and the unwillingness from council to raise taxes because the public feels their taxes are too high. At the same time, they're saying, I'm paying my taxes, where are my services? And so it's all of those things together. And so, Mr. McEwen, I'm just wondering if we, in that sort of tension of all things, I think two things. One, we do have a lot of successes already. They're just not really talked about in aggregate, right? And then on the other hand, there's the question about what do we call permaculture and beautification versus naturalization, which adds to this narrative that the city isn't maintaining things properly. So I don't know which one we want to tackle first, the wins that we already have or this continuing confusion between what is naturalization and permaculture with an eye to beautification. And I guess that is subjective, but there are some common things that we can agree on, I think, there.
Yeah, I think what I'd say to that is really the intention of this report was highlight the turf aspect, targeting the turf aspect, but realizing that it kind of opens the door to a number of different related topics. So here's to say, hey, that the amount of grass that we need to cut has grown, pun intended, and the amount of resources to do that have not. And I can see the parallels to a number of different areas, but this report is really to reset expectations. Not looking for more dollars, although we're happy to operationalize anything that council is able to approve. This is really to say, you know, this is the current state of our situation. We want to manage expectations, but I completely agree that there's a lot of wins, and we did highlight that in the report to say, you know, there's a lot of operational benefits, efficiency changes that have been taken place. There's been a lot of really great work and a lot of more great work to come. But the intention here was really to help reset expectations in terms of this is what we're capable of achieving with what we have, and here's all the benefits as well of you know what we've been able to leverage with what we have so far.
Yeah, and I guess the challenge is how do you get all that information percolating out into the public awareness, and that's our continual and forever challenge.
I agree. Struggle of being a public servant, I suppose, is
okay. And so with this motion, you said we'd probably see the operational difference sort of mid-June. And so we wouldn't want to overpromise to the public. So what differences might they actually see?
How we would leverage this, we tried to highlight how we would leverage this money operationally is the first thing we would do is look at how do we increase to another trim cycle. So we're doing the weed whacking. Ideally, we'll have to run the numbers on what that service level would look like, and that would be articulated in the SOBA. But you know, ideally, can we get to a third trim cycle throughout the summer, and then how do we supplement the weed management, horticulture budgets? That's another. Let's say those are probably the two most that we hear from. The two most visible is the weed whacking, and then the weed management and all the horticulture beds across our city. So supplementing that, but keeping in mind, like this is. Like we would be clear on what those service levels are, and in order to help manage expectations.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate all the work you do. Would you be open to a offline meeting with myself, maybe a couple other councillors, to sort of figure out how we approach this from a public perspective?
Oh, like from a communications and how do we
and clarification and different approaches. Yeah.
Always open to gather feedback and advice, of course.
Okay. In that case, I won't be asking about iron chelate. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Councillor Rice.
Just a quick question to the to Mayor Sohi and regarding the motion, and because as Councillor Wright mentioned, this 400K is not in the report. Ms. McEwen, and you think their amendments, just the really tiny wording amendment to reflect this information?
Yeah, what I understand, Councillor Rice, is that capital $400,000 in that range is necessary, right?
Yeah.
I understand it wasn't in the report, so maybe we can take out the reference to the report, right? So that'll be fine. Yeah.
Will you consider just the friendly is not amendment? It's just for the wording reflect the ensure information is correct.
Yeah.
So can we make that change in the city administration to make sure, and when public read this motion, they will not go back to the report to find this 400K information?
Thank you for the question, Chair Principe. So the intent of the friendly amendment is to remove the reference to the city operations report.
Yes, I believe that would just, is that just like a clerical, or do we need to make an amendment? It's just a friendly amendment? Yeah.
So Chair Principe, if it is acceptable to the mover as a friendly amendment, we can make that adjustment.
Yeah.
Okay, please, let's make that adjustment. It looks like Mayor Sohi is okay. Councillor Knack shook his head. Yeah. Yeah, and Councillor Paquette. So it's friendly to the committee. So please do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all from me.
All right. It looks like we are done with questions to administration. Now, I'll ask my colleagues to please sign up if they would like to speak on the motion. Or just raise your hand. Anyone? No? Mayor Sohi, would you like to close?
Yeah, thank you so much to committee colleagues as well as council colleagues for this discussion. And I want to thank each and every one of you, because all of us have been asking questions about improving core services ever since we got elected to this position. And Councillor Principe, you raised this a number of years ago, and Councillor Rice and Councillor Rutherford brought this up for discussion as well during the last budget conversation, and here we are today. I want to really stress to this point to Edmontonians that that we hear you when you are concerned about taxes, and our goal is always to maintain those taxes affordable. But this council is investing in core services. I will start with our investments in EPS. This council has significantly increased Edmonton Police Service budget. We have significantly invested in public transit, making on-demand public transit permanent, increasing off-peak service, and we adding new service in new communities, as well as communities in the core that are underserved. Sorry. No, we have an increased library service and keeping libraries open or extending the days on Sundays. We have extended the hours of outdoor pools that were reduced. We had increased our investment in snow and ice control that was underfunded. And this area, the maintenance of our boulevards, our streets, the turf maintenance, and horticulture maintenance, another area that needs significant improvements, because this is a core service. So this council's focus has been on improving front-facing core services for Edmontonians, along with tackling societal issues, long-term issues of houselessness, mental health, climate change, and all those, right? So I hope that committee will support this, because this part one of this motion will allow us to get to a funding level to 2019. We won't be getting to the service levels to 2019 because of the growth in inventory, but it's a start. It's an incremental investment in areas that have not seen proper investments. So when we come to this in spring, I hope council will support this as well. And the second part of the motion is to have further comprehensive conversation around how we catch up. How we catch up with growth in the inventory, and how we add more resources that service levels increase on a consistent basis for Edmontonians to see our city to be clean, our city to be well maintained, and that they can enjoy the quality public services and see the enhancement in their quality public services. So I would encourage my colleagues to support this, and look forward to the conversation in the spring. and then further conversation in the fall, how we continue to improve our core services that Edmontonians expect us to continue to invest in.
Wonderful. Thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that has carried. We have completed item 6.1. We are next on to public reports. None. Responses to councillor inquiries. None. Private reports. None. Motions pending. None. Notices of motion or motions without customary notice. None. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well done, team.